Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts, James, and last year, maybe was it been after 10 years of DC on air, the Arrowverse finally wrapped up with a show that Joe and our other guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, have been talking about and giving hints about and loving throughout the entire run since I think the start of the podcast was been on for 4 years. So the show started like right when we started the podcast. So
Yes, you did.
Anyway, we're going to be talking about today the end of the Arrowverse by wrapping up Superman and Lois. And so, of course, joining me to do that is Joe.
Thank you, James. It's great to be here. Hello, folks. How you doing?
And of course, joining us is our resident Arrowverse expert and a person who loves all things in pop culture. Adrienne Garofalo is back with us as well.
Hello.
And she's got a guest.
Yes, and Lucy.
And Lucy. And Lucy, if you're
well, temporarily.
Temporarily. So, I will I've said, Joe, you've talked about this many times, especially in the last, was it 4 months, 5 months of this show, about giving us little updates on where they are in Superman and Lois. And Adrienne, I think when you were on last time, you might have also given your love for the season they were currently in or working up to. But I watched all of the last season. I only watched like maybe 5 episodes of season 1. And it wasn't that I didn't like it or show. It's just I've come to the point where there's so much comic book pop culture stuff to watch.
Yes.
That I just couldn't get to it. It was just like with like trying to keep up with the things that are like, I guess I was like more invested in versus just time in general to watch TV, which is very little. I didn't keep up with, but Joe, it really sold the last season, and
Amazing.
And I wanted to jump in based on what he was saying, and here we are. And I think it's also good to mark the Arrowverse end with the show because, you know, we're hoping that James Gunn's Superman is going to fly high and rebirth us, but I think the Berlanti Arrowverse gave us a really good DC universe on screen that we never thought we would get, and it gave us characters that we never thought we would see, and it did great renditions of characters that have been interpreted before, and really did a great job, and including, with no exception, the person we're going to talk about today, Superman and Lois Lane. So either one of you can answer this question. I don't know how much of our audience may have seen the episode, but we're going to spoil things, audience, too. But just to give them a context, how would you summarize the show, or give it like a little nutshell of the show to people who maybe have not watched it or jumping in for this episode?
Good, Adrienne.
Family, like definitely family, and more like coming of age. Just I'd say family. It is more a family show. It's about the family drama stuff. Occasionally it would definitely dip into the CW teen melodrama, but nowhere near as much as most of the other shows on that channel do. It was more grounded and more it's funny because and as much as it's about Superman, it's still like a very realistic take on a lot of different topics, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
I'll let Joe go.
I wrote a little tiny paragraph here. I wrote, the world's greatest hero and the world's greatest investigative journalist face the trials and tribulations of raising teenage twin boys in a world where dad and mom are constantly fighting the bad guys. And it's and I know everybody who's listening to this podcast knows how many times I've compared this show, Superman and Lois, to one of my favorite all-time TV shows, which this is now in that category too. That's Friday Night Lights. And I think Friday Night Lights and this show are about, both shows extrapolate the challenges of a modern world in small town settings, whether it be Dillon, East Texas, or Smallville, Kansas. And as Adrienne said, it's a family show. It's about family. Friday Night Lights is about football. Not really. It's about coming of age. Superman and Lois is about, superheroics. Not really. It's about family and the trials and tribulations that families go through in the modern world. So I have some flash facts here that I want to toss out right at the beginning. The IMDb rating for this series is 7.8. Rotten Tomatoes was 88%. And the highest rated episode of this series with a 9 I wrote it down somewhere. 9.5 was the last episode. That was the highest rated episode of the series, and I was my favorite episode. Yeah, that's so. It's I don't know how it was a different take, obviously on an iconic character, but it never strayed so far that you didn't recognize it, the character or the other characters, supporting characters. And I think I've said this, James, and I'll say it again. I'll repeat again. I think Superman and Lois is the best live action iteration of Superman since Superman the movie.
Wow.
So
yeah. Do you agree with that, Adrienne?
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, that's like I said, I enjoyed the premise when I first watched the first 5 episodes of season 1, and like I said, Joe, you sold it enough to me. I guess, Joe, you sold it to me because you were in it, I think, 3 episodes into the final season before I started getting it.
Yeah, I think about that, yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess what sold it to me was I'll be perfectly honest, folks, I saw a screenshot of the Doomsday from the first 3 episodes, and I was like, wow, that looks better than the one we saw in the Snyderverse. It looks like Doomsday. And Death of Superman was like the first time I read Superman comics. It was a hook, and it got me. They got new readers. It got me hooked on Superman, or at least to read the character for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see that fight, especially since the one we got in the Batman v Superman was not that great.
No, it wasn't.
It was not that great. So I tuned in for that, and I was hooked. I guess just since I want to remember. In these wrap-ups, I don't like to do play-by-plays. There's too many internet videos and YouTube videos that do play-by-plays way better than we can, or with all their editing and stuff. So we can kind of just talk about whatever is interesting to you two and myself. But just to kind of set up the final season, because Joe, you had explained to me, where did Doomsday come from? Either you or Adrienne could answer. I'm just kind of throwing it out there.
Well, Adrienne, correct me if I'm wrong, but Doomsday was originally the character that was left over from season 2.
Season 2, Bizarro.
The Bizarro world, yeah. Doomsday was Bizarro. And Luthor gets a hold of him in season 4 and realizes that every time he kills him, he'll come back stronger, like he does in the comic books. And basically, he keeps doing that to him until he mutates into what we know as, you're right, that's right, sweetheart. Until we know what he is Doomsday. And so it's Luthor obviously taking advantage of something that was literally dropped into his lap in his quest to destroy the Man of Steel. So yeah, and season 3 ended on a cliffhanger with Superman and Doomsday going at it on top of the moon, right, Adrienne? Basically.
Yes, actually, it's funny because I didn't watch the season 3 finale until just before season 4 started.
That's great, and you can
because I knew they had wrapped up season 3 with Bruno Mannheim. Mm-hmm. It had ended, but then there was still the other episode, and I knew Luthor might have even shown up the second to last episode. I'm trying to remember. I think he showed up the second to last episode, and then and I was like, you know what? This is going to end on a cliffhanger. We don't know when season 4 will start. Because of the way the cliffhanger, I could tell the way they would do a cliffhanger was going to be so hard to watch that I said, I'm going to just wait till it gets closer so I don't have to wait so long. And then this little munchkin was born. So Dad was out here with me, and I said, well, you didn't see season 3. So I'll rewatch season 3 and then we'll actually see the end, and we'll be all, teed up for season 4. So we watched season 4 together, and yeah, it was, I feel like I lost the thread. What were we?
No,
what was the question?
We were just wrapping up where
Doomsday came from.
Right. Okay. Oops, sorry. So yeah.
We were setting the tone. We were setting the tone for our conversation about the final season. So,
yes. So yes. So the Doomsday was at the end, and then Grandpa's gonna take Lucy.
The distraction.
So out here, let's get Soups in here. It ended. Didn't it end with them flying at each other? Was that on the
basically
moon?
yes?
Or
and
was that?
No, it ended up with them in a
What was the
very
initial
comic book
fight?
pose where they were just about to smash into each other.
Yeah.
And there was a time at the ending of that season where it was not set in stone that they were going to come back for a fourth season. So that, and there was some internet stuff going around. Oh, is this the way this, are they going to leave us hanging? Kind of like they did with Superman and Lois, Lois and Clark 30 some odd years ago with the baby. Where'd the baby come from? And he never came back. So, but that was short lived that, they weren't coming back. But then when they were coming back for season 4, it was announced, this is our last season.
Right.
They were planning to go 7 seasons. They had signed up for 7 seasons, the actors, and they had the thing planned out. And then they had to do a quick, not an about face, but a quick. We got to get our ducks in a row to finish this thing, and I think they did a marvelous. I think Todd Helbing, who's the showrunner, I don't know if he condensed 3 years of storytelling into that last season, but it worked. It certainly did. It was only 10 episodes, and it was like every minute or every episode, there was nothing. There was no filler in that 4th season, none whatsoever. Absolutely. It was all driving the narrative forward. Yeah.
I agree. As someone who's jumping in late to it, I felt like they used the 10 episodes well. It wasn't, I mean, not that this was on a streaming service, but I feel a lot of these 10, 13 episode series that are now regular for streaming and even network television, there always seems like there's one episode that's like, we didn't need this episode. Why are we watching this episode? Like, you didn't need to make 11 episodes or 13. You could have just made 12. But there was no extra that they could have edited out. I think that would have, I thought the pacing was good. I thought the character direction was good. And I kind of like this thing, they're doing now with the more established heroes, especially Superman, where this is it's something we haven't seen before, and that's okay because there's been enough live action Superman and Superman comic books where you can see the regular story. So I like this alternate take where he's got a family and he's not working for the Daily, planet, and he's living. I like the whole alternate take on it because I've had enough of like quote unquote regular Superman that.
And it wasn't even necessarily an alternate take because it was just, you figure it takes place after everything we've read in the comic books because it's the end of Superman. It's like after he and Lois have gotten married and they've had kids. I mean, this is the kids are teenagers. Obviously, a lot of time has gone by. So it doesn't even have to be considered an alternate. I mean, obviously it is, but depending on how you take it.
I guess like having a son is like having a son is something he's had the last how many years is like I know the surrounding around Jonathan Kent is like his.
Oh, that was.
He's had a son in the comic books now established for what, the last 10 years?
About that, it happened somewhere after the beginning of the New 52.
Because it happens in Birthright, right?
Well, no, there was a miniseries by Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks called Lois and Clark, Superman, and then something. The rest of the stuff I don't remember.
And not Birthright, Rebirth.
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 But it was one of the books that was published during that in the New 52 era. It was the only time.
Oh, right.
At that point, that was the only Superman book I was reading because the regular Superman book was horrible.
That's right. I forgot, Joe, that there was the New 52.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't want to talk about that. This is a positive program. We won't talk about
anyway, so having a son, but then having 2 sons, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it is like you could look at it that this is the back end of Superman's life as we're about to, get into. That it is like at least in this series the back end. Of
I've seen some people on YouTube say and some social media that this is kind of like a spiritual sequel to Smallville in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you can make a case for that. Yeah, you probably could. Yeah.
But as Adrienne pointed out, with less angst, because that show is
a lot less angst. Yes.
That's why we never finished that show because I think we got into season 3 and Dad and I were like, "Do you want to watch Smallville? The next episode of Smallville?" And Dad finally he started going like, "It's all." No, I can't be with. Oh no, I can't do this. And he was like, I can't take it anymore. And so we stopped watching. So I would just watch sporadic episodes whenever some other DC character would show up in Smallville. That's when, or at least in the last few seasons. I watched Super Friends and JSA. Those episodes are the ones I watched.
Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, right? Zatanna. Yeah.
It's Anyway, well, yeah, I can see this as being a sequel to Smallville,
But according to the Arrowverse, since the Smallville Superman gave up his powers and
right?
just
And they
became
had
a
twin
family man.
daughters, right? Didn't they have twin daughters in that
Oh,
Arrowverse
maybe.
episode? We didn't
They
see
had
them, but they
at
were
least
mentioned.
a daughter. I forgot it
Yeah,
was two.
I think they had twin girls, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah.
yeah, but the joke on that is like he could do that because he defeated every villain, including moving Apocalypse the planet. On the last episode of Smallville, he had defeated every villain, including Darkseid, that he could retire at that point.
Like I said before, all that was left was Toyman and the Prankster, and who wants to see that?
Yeah. So anyway,
didn't we see those in Flash? I think.
They might have.
We saw the Prankster. Yeah.
But, Toyman might have been Supergirl. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, yeah. I think Toyman.
Prankster showed up years ago in Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
Bronson Pinchot played him and did a very good job.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, back on track.
Yeah, we'll get back on track.
And Lois. So anyway, I'll just maybe I'll just jump into some of the things that I really enjoy it. I'd love to hear your guys' takes on it. I'll start with I like this Lex Luthor a lot. I thought Michael Cutlass, I thought he did an amazing job as Lex Luthor because it's a Lex Luthor I don't think we've seen before. But he was like this, the characterizing. I think the closest I think we've seen to him is like the Justice League Unlimited series, or Superman animated, where he's the brilliant businessman, scientist, but also a guy who's willing to get his hands dirty and looks like that. And most of the other Lex Luthors look like intellects. They don't look like they can take Superman physically on. Not that you could, but like, they don't have a physical. This guy, like, he looked physically imposing. He was obviously mentally and emotionally imposing. But I'm curious, what did you guys think of the take on Lex Luthor?
Good, Adrienne. Yeah. I got my thoughts.
I thought he did a really good job. Like, it was good villain and stuff. I did have a hard time thinking of him as Lex Luthor as we've known Lex Luthor, probably because it was a very different take. But at first it was weird because it didn't really feel like Lex Luthor. Because I didn't feel like they didn't play off the businessman side, I guess, or the inventor side. So it was more like this psycho narcissistic, which works, but I don't know. It just I think I didn't dislike it. I feel like Luthor, as we've seen him in everything else, was smarter about how which is weird because he still kept getting the upper hand through a lot of the season. It seemed like he wasn't being especially smart about how he did it, but that of course was the storyline.
But I was waiting for him to get rid of the beard. It took a long time to get rid of the beard. The beard
well, he also had hair at first. Didn't he have hair? Oh wait,
he did have
hair. No, that was
the
flashback.
He was the but he had hair in the flashback, and the beard bothered me until he finally got rid of it in episode 7 or whatever it was. I was like, thank God, get rid of it.
Yeah, 7 or 8.
I thought this Lex Luthor was the most visceral of all Lex Luthors.
Maybe that's the word I was looking for.
And I thought he was the most obsessed of all Lex Luthors. And I would go so far as to say he's the first blue-collar billionaire we've ever seen portrayed. If that incongruity means anything. But it's an oxymoron, a blue-collar billionaire. But he was completely obsessed with destroying not only Superman, but Lois Lane. He was more obsessed with destroying Lois Lane because she put him in prison for 17 years. And it was a mistake on her part because he was not guilty of the crime that he was sent to prison for.
Right. Except he was guilty of everything else.
That went on in Metropolis. Exactly. So I think that Luthor, when you see in flashbacks, that was more of the traditional Luthor, the billionaire Luthor, the Clancy Brown Luthor from the animated series. I mean, the episode, I believe it was episode 8, maybe 9, where they have the fist fight, Clark and Luthor. He destroys Clark's superpowers with the red lamps, the red solar radiation, and they have this big fist fight, this knockdown, drag out, and Clark barely wins.
7.
Was it 7? Okay,
it might have been 7 or 8, because 8 was Sharp Dressed Man.
That's right.
I can't remember if that happened. That was after, or was it?
I think it was.
I
I
thought it
think it was.
after.
And you're right, Adrienne. He was, he was. I can't. I can't. It's not. Wasn't Marcy, and it wasn't obviously Miss Tessmacher. Who was the other girl who was running the company? What was her name?
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember his right hand person
Yeah.
who
Oh,
like
in
was having.
this?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
this.
yeah, who he was
She
having.
pleaded with him to stop this. She
Right.
pleaded with him to put this obsession aside and come. The stockholders want you back in Metropolis running the company, and he kept. He set up shop right across the street from the Smallville Gazette, whatever it was called. And yes, he was again the most obsessed Lex Luthor I've ever seen, and I enjoyed the hell out of it because it was such a different take on Lex Luthor.
What Joe was. I think that aspect of it. I think that's what I meant by he didn't seem as smart about it. It's like that was the only thing that kind of bumped me as far as the believability of the storyline is he was obsessed. He was doing all this crazy everything he was doing seemed to illustrate exactly what Lois and Clark had written in their articles. It's like
Mhm.
how was he still getting away with what he was doing? And he didn't seem like he was going about it intelligently. His right hand his right hand man, his right hand woman, she was yeah, like you said, she was pleading to the stockholders, all that stuff. But he like so she, and then she said, "Oh, we're going to do this way. This is, we need to do this in the smart way."
Mhm.
But all the other stuff, I don't know, that was the only thing that I was like, how is this happening this way? What I did like was how Smallville didn't turn on Superman. Like they stuck by him and they're like, no, I trust you. I also liked how, not to get ahead of ourselves, but like the way people we know, before he announced it.
I have her name. She was Amanda McCoy,
I was gonna say Amanda,
played
but
by
then I
Yvonne
thought I was
Chapman,
mixing up another character.
and she was excellent in the role. Because she, it started out that she was like his right hand man, girl Friday, whatever, but she actually had feelings for him.
Mhm.
And when he rebuffed her, that's when she turned on him.
Mhm.
And I think, and everything you're saying, Adrian, about how did this happen? How did this happen? I think it's because of his complete and utter hatred for Lois Lane, especially. He's a brilliant man, but think about it. He didn't build that suit. He stole that suit
Right.
from John Henry Irons, and he had his lackey Milton Fine refurbish it for him, right? So this Luthor, if he was a physical genius, a mental genius, we didn't get to see much of that. We just saw him as a manipulator of people, and I think that was his greatest strength in this iteration of this Lex Luthor. He was a master manipulator of people. I don't know. I guess if you want to compare him to another comic book character, he's a human version of Loki. He's kind of like a trickster god, using people to just destroy themselves by manipulating them and turning them against each other. And he tried that.
Everybody like was letting him get away with this stuff.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was
Yeah.
Except for
was
Lana.
mind-blowing.
Lana didn't let him get away with anything.
Well,
right, and that was good.
remember, Clark was putting up with a lot in season 4, and the thing that sent Clark over the edge, which started that big fist fight, was when Luthor sent his henchmen to kill Lana, and that was it. Of course, Clark loves Lois to the nth degree, but Clark's devotion and love for Lana, his sister and a friend, it's his best friend. He even says it in the last episode, my best friend. That just sent Clark over the edge. And he, you come after Lana, I may have to kill you. So, yeah. A lot of characters didn't act according to type vis-a-vis the comic book in this iteration, but it was believable because the writing was so well done. So
No, I agree. I mean, I thought it was well. I mean, we focused on the bad guy. Let's focus on the heroes of the story a little bit now. I mean,
Mhm.
Tyler Hoechlin and who plays Lois
Elizabeth
Lane.
Tulloch.
Yeah, they both did an excellent. They did an excellent job. They like you said, Joe. They didn't always act well. At least that instance with Clark. Fist fighting with Luther in the middle of the street, even without his powers, is a little bit out of character. But I didn't think it was out of the story's character, nor out of
No,
the realm of
Right.
no,
possibility.
it made
Um,
sense within the story. Yes.
and I thought they were great as Superman and Lois. I mean, they
No, they
really
were. That was
they
some of the
moved.
best casting, I think, of those two characters. And there's been some good casting over the years, but I think they're
Oh
among.
yeah, I mean,
They are definitely in the top.
Start with George Reeves and Christopher Reeves, right?
Yeah.
Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill. Yeah, Dean
Yep.
Cain. Yeah, no, he's right up there with all of them. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought he was able to bring that small town charm always to the
Mhm.
character, but also be heroic when he turned into Superman.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like he could do both. He played both Superman and Clark very well.
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
Which it was nice to see, I guess, in this, since it's a family show, and it was about their family, the two of them raising the boys in the small town America. That some of the quirkiness you attribute to Clark Kent as him putting on a face, it was like no, that's who he is. Like some of that little weird goofiness and quirkiness is not a face or an act he's putting on. That's just
That is Clark. Yes.
he is Clark. He is goofy and he is bumbling sometimes and he is aw shucks. It's not like Superman's like I got to play this role. Like no, that's who he is.
Yeah.
Mhm. No, I'm so glad they eschewed the bumbling Clark. I think we're getting vibes that that's coming back in the upcoming James Gunn film, and we'll see how the actor can handle that. But I'm not a fan of bumbling Clark. They did away with
No.
that 30 some odd years ago with Dean Cain and Lois and Clark, and I think that's the way that should be the type. At that point, Clark should not be this because it's not believable that this bumbling, stumbling, awkward guy would be the second best reporter in Metropolis. There's no way nobody's ever be better than Lois Lane. But it's like, why would you talk to this guy if he's such a nerd? Oh, the mayor can't see you today. Go away. Send Lois. We're not going to talk to you. I wanted to ask you guys because we had two actors play Jonathan Kent. Let's see, Jordan Elsas, and he left after season 2, and then we got Michael Bishop. Did you prefer one or the other?
I thought they both were like I thought in the realm of recasting a character, I thought they did a really good job finding somebody that played it very similarly. Like he had a lot of similar mannerisms and stuff, and he looked quite a bit like him.
He did, yeah.
If he looked quite a bit like him, but also slightly more like the rest of the family. So
Okay, yeah.
so it
all right.
kind of I thought it transitioned pretty smoothly, though I hadn't heard about the recasting at first, and then I remember seeing like the trailers for season 3 and
What
being
was
like,
the
wait,
other guy?
who's
Yeah.
that? and then
Jonathan.
realized who it was. But I thought both did a good job.
I don't really have a point of comparison because I only watched 5 episodes of the other actors, so I'm going to go with the current incarnation. But I liked both boys. I will say, not just the recasting. I liked both sons. I also like, you could say it's like a story trope, but I appreciate the fact that they did it, but they did it very wisely. They did it very realistically. Of like, the one who was more, I guess, of the black sheep of the family, quote unquote, got the powers first, and then it seems like I hadn't watched the previous seasons, but it seems like he might have indulged in his powers a little bit, or and then at a certain point got tired of it, and then or was having to do it reluctantly, and then the not the favorite son, but I'm using it just for the talk, like not that I think they both love them equally, but then the superstar who's the athlete gets the powers, and he's like whipping around and mastering them quickly. And I thought the play between the two brothers was good. I thought it was like very realistic for a family drama. And I always thought the way that the Clark and Lois talked to them, I could see like as a parent, like in a parent in that situation, I thought the writing was very spot on. Like they kept it made it real in a fantasy universe of
Right.
like how you would be a parent and talk to kids who have powers when you yourself have power. I just really liked all that complex storytelling. When he comes Again, spoilers, audience.
Oh, come on.
When Clark comes back from the dead, like, well, you're gonna have to step up because your father can't do it. Or when, and I also thought it was very dramatic when Jonathan, like, they're he's trying to change Jonathan, and his heart gives out, and he like crashes in the snow, and I thought all that stuff was really interesting, interesting family dynamics, and really interesting with the kids. So
Jonathan getting his powers also, because like Jordan was commenting how I think it was Jordan was commenting how his heart rate's always calm, and he's always calm, and that's good. And it was, and if you think about it, that on the one hand made it make even more sense as to why Jordan got his powers first, because it was the stress that brought it on.
Exactly.
And he was down and it snapped. And then Jordan finally, like, he can't, and when he was like, oh my God, just leave me alone, I can't, and he flips out on him, and then all the powers at once instead of
just at once, like an explosion.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really good scene. I thought the way they did that was just technically was really impressive.
There are a couple of scenes between these two boys, these two young actors. Let's see now. Alex Garfin is Jordan, and Michael Bishop. There's, we got to get back to the big elephant in the room here, which is what the season 3 major subplot with Lois Lane and her illness. Obviously, never before did they touch anything like that in the comics or any other live action. But there's a scene when they're in the hospital and Lois is undergoing treatment, and Jordan's about to lose it, and his powers are just, like if he loses it, he might destroy the entire hospital. And Jonathan, who doesn't have his powers yet in season 3, grabs him by the shoulders and looks him in the eye, as only a brother could do at that point. And he brings him down. He calms him down, and he brings him back to reality. He said, everything's gonna be fine. And it's just, I thought that was one of the highlights of the entire series.
Definitely.
That was an incredible scene. And then there's a scene at the end, in the last episode, where Jonathan is quote unquote missing because Luther just swatted him aside, right? And Lois tells Jordan, "Find your brother," and he does find him. And it looks like Jonathan is dead at that point, and he starts artificial respiration, and he brings and Jordan just grabs his brother when he's awake, and he goes, "Please don't ever leave me," and he says, "I'll never leave you," and it's like, wow.
Didn't he say, like, did you just blow me up? Or it was
just blow me up. Yeah, it was, yeah, exactly. And again, a great moment between these two young actors, and it's not that these two boys always got along. We saw them fight along the way over the years, but you could see the bond that was there between them. And why do they have that bond? For the same reason that Lois and Clark have that bond. Their love and their parents' love obviously spread to the boys. So. Yeah, I know I'm just rambling here, but I just I love all these scenes and these little quote unquote little moments. Yeah, the fighting is good and all the action, but this is what really made this series.
What is it? We were talking about Clark being goofy versus it's like bumbling, and I think one of the scenes that won me over for the show from the beginning was, it must have been episode 2. When Clark became the assistant coach of the football team. When
that was funny.
And he comes walking out. He goes, "Look, the coach gave me this jacket, and I bought a jacket, and he gave me this hat." And he was just like so goofy, but it was believable, and it was just that. It's just a little detail. It's just so real.
That's Clark. You didn't feel like he was putting on
right after that, he tried to lift up.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, a false face there because I can't I keep my secret identity. I mean, by the end of season, just even before the big fight in season 4, most of the town was caught on who Clark really was. I mean, it was, and kind of like in Man of Steel. Basically, both Pete and Lana. Did we see Lana in Man of Steel? But we saw Pete Ross. And it was kind of intimated that Smallville in Man of Steel knew that Clark was Superman, because it's kind of hard to hide those powers. Yeah. So now the entire series is just rife with all these beautiful moments. Yeah. Now, as I said before, season 3, Lois being diagnosed with breast cancer, right? Wow.
That scene when the audience finds out and Clark finds out at the same time, and he's floating away. That scene was
I'm glad you mentioned Adrienne, because that might be the best scene in the entire series.
If not, it's tied with the best season.
Because Lois is trying to talk a woman down from literally down from jumping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Well, I found out something about myself today that's, I'm paraphrasing here, out of my control and terrible." And there's Superman hovering off, let's say a quarter of a mile away, whatever. And he could rush in and catch that woman, but he realizes what his wife is doing. And then beyond letting Lois save this woman, he hears what the diagnosis for the first time. It's like, wow, what a powerful moment. Really. Nothing like this we've ever seen in the live action Superman before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's something out of his control. All his powers.
Yeah.
Can't.
Well, we've had moments like that where, the very first movie when they're burying Jonathan, and he says all those powers, all those things I could do, and I couldn't even save him.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a part and parcel of being Superman. You literally can't save everybody.
Yeah.
And he has to come to terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, it doesn't compare to those two scenes that at some point I'll have to go back and watch the whole series. But I thought was very powerful where he finally reveals himself to the town.
Yes.
Another
that
great
guy in the
another
bar.
great.
After spending most of that episode telling everybody I'm not Superman,
right? Basically gaslighting Smallville.
Yeah.
Yes,
and he's got to make this choice, which he did. He makes the right, but just the reveal and the whole thing was so
the slow mo.
Yeah, of him.
And the reveal, the choice, the reason why he made the choice is because it was hurting not only his family by keeping the secret, but friends like that kid who saw what he saw, and nobody would believe him, right? So. So much better than when Brian Bendis had Clark reveal himself as Superman a few years back in the comic books. That was just like, no, this is dumb. This doesn't make any sense. This, within the context of the story, we have Clark beating up Luthor, makes sense, and then this reveal in the diner, which seemed to be like the meeting place in Smallville, that diner, right? Mm-hmm. That was like the watering hole, so to speak, which makes sense in a small town, I guess. Yeah. It was so well done and so believable. And it's like, okay, I understand why he did this. I get it. Mm-hmm. This is the greatest secret on earth, but it had to be done.
And they did it such a believable way to follow up. Like he did an interview about it.
Yes.
Like his life and their lives changed. It was, I'm sure it seems like those little pieces, like you were saying, Joe, they had possibly three more seasons. So they were contract and scripted out. That was probably a chunk of a whole season.
Yes, Clark's reveal, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And not just going to be like this, part of the first half of this season or wherever it was. Like, they crammed a lot of things, but they did it well. I mean, they were definitely landing a lot of planes for their last season, but they handled it very well. But I could see that could have been a whole season of him coming.
Yeah, similarly, when he revealed himself in the flashback to Lois's father, I thought that was a really interesting, like the way the camera moved around him and the light and stuff, like he looked like he transformed within that shot from Clark into Super. Like he
said nothing. He just took off his glasses, stood up, and you know what that I think I know where the inspiration for that came from. After Christopher Reeve Superman takes Lois on a flight around Metropolis, and Can You Read My Mind, the whole song thing, and they land, and she's going inside to get a coat. And he goes, Lois, there's something I have to tell you. And he stands up, his voice changes, and he's about to tell her that he's Superman. And then she comes out, and he shrinks into himself, puts his glasses on again. I think that could have been the inspiration for that scene. And only two actors have ever done that, Christopher Reeve and Tyler Hoechlin, and pulled it off. It was incredible. Yeah. That was a great scene. And the entire arc of season 3 with Lois battling cancer was just amazing.
Was good. I think season 2, while I still enjoyed season 2, I think it was the weak link season.
I completely agree.
I was like, I enjoyed it, but I was like, it's not as good as season 1 was. And then season 3 came back with a bang, and it was so good. And then season 4 was also so good. Though I think season 3 was probably my favorite season out of the 4 seasons.
All right, that's fair. My favorite season is the last season, season 4. But
season 4 was really good, but there's something about when the bad guy keeps winning and the good guys, and it's like it's a little too much of the bad guy. I was getting too frustrated and like, which also means it was really good.
Yeah, because
they successfully got the emotion out of me, but
exactly.
it just makes it harder to watch. Is all. That's why I think season 3.
Now, season 3, Adrienne, is that the season where Clark reveals himself to Lana? Right? He's hovering over the road, and he stops, and she sees him hovering, and he freezes the tree behind her, and Lana goes.
Season 3 is when Lois has cancer. So,
and I think that's also when Clark reveals himself to Lana that he's Superman.
He might. Actually, I want to say. I think
it's early season 4.
I think it's season 2 that he reveals himself to Lana.
Okay, all right, yeah.
I think it might be season 2, and then Sarah finds out in season 3.
Okay, but there is that.
Both.
No, well, I think Lana's the first
one. Season 3 is when. Oh wait, no, yeah. Sarah finds out in season 3. I can't remember now. I'm all mixed up.
Yeah, well, a lot of people learn the secret, and some learn it because there's carelessness involved. Jordan doing some things that led to that. But I thought the reveal of Clark to Lana. At first I thought, wait a minute, Lana should know at this point, because in most iterations, adult Clark and adult Lana Lana knows Clark's secret. It obviously in the burn. I don't know if that was the case in. Superman Birthright. Keith will have to tell me if that's the case in Superman Secret Origin, the Jeff Johns origin. But it's usually established at some point. Even in the animated series, Lana knew Clark's secret. So I thought that was different, that they kept it a secret from her that long, that she didn't put it together. But no. I'm not dissing her. Hey, she winds up becoming mayor of Smallville and becoming a very integral part of what happens at the end. She's got a plan. But
yes.
That was a great scene too. Again, this entire series has these incredible moments with all these characters. And again, in season 4, as we get to the final episodes, Clark doesn't want the boys to get involved because he's afraid for their, it's Lois. Mm-hmm. Lois who says, you've got to help your father.
Right.
Because she survived. Yes, Clark was killed too, and he came back. We have to talk about how that happened. But Lois survives cancer. She fights that off, and she's not going to give in to anybody, especially Lex Luthor. And she realizes for her family to survive, they all have to pull together. She comes to that realization before Clark does. Mm-hmm. And that's very Lois Lane, I think.
Yes.
So I enjoyed it. I'm so glad they did that, and that she was the impetus for the boys getting involved more than they were at that point.
Yes, I think we also need to talk about that final epilogue scene.
Yes, well, right. maybe we should lead into that. Like, just we'll do so. Superman Doomsday takes Superman's heart.
Oh yes, that's right. That's what we were.
Before we do that, can we talk about one character who set that up? Another character who, my favorite character in the entire series. I love them all, but my favorite character was General Sam Lane, because he has an arc.
He does have an arc. Yes.
I compare his arc, his change, his personality, the way he views the world, his family, his son-in-law who he doesn't like as Clark and as Superman. I compare him. I always do the shades. I compare things to other TV shows. Well, I compare General Sam Lane to Margaret Houlihan from MASH. They're both regular Army at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And she softens, especially after her divorce from Donald Penobscot. And Sam comes around too when he sees how not only important Superman is to the world, but how important his family is. That family is to him, because it fills a void that he didn't have. Sam, all Sam had was the Army. He was regular Army, right? But he even adopts Natalie Irons as his granddaughter.
Right.
So I just wanted to bring that up because of all the characters in the show, he was my favorite character because I just loved his arc. And the actor, Dylan Walsh, is a spectacular actor. Yeah. He's been around for a long time, and they found great people to do mean,
Yeah,
there wasn't
everybody
one
was
bit of
great.
casting that was off here. So, but
Definitely.
yeah,
And
you want
John Henry Irons is another one that had like I
oh
always
my God,
forget
what a
how
great
he
character.
started the series. James,
Yeah.
were you incredibly confused when you saw that, if you come into season 4 and he's on his side when he's like hating him? Did at the point that you stopped season 1, had you found out that he was John Henry Irons yet?
I thought he was a Lex Luthor for the future, wasn't he, or something?
He
In
was
this,
initially
That's
called
how.
Captain Luther, right?
yeah, Captain
Yeah.
Luthor. Yeah, that's where I got
Because
to
it
his
was the suit the AI in the suit
Suit, right?
that he
Exactly.
hadn't changed. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, I did a little bit of like YouTube catch up with for some just to figure these things out. But yeah, it was a little confusing. Like I said, if you could watch season 4 without watching the previous seasons, it helps to have the other stuff. I mean, they
Sure.
did do a good job of like making season 4 somewhat self-contained if you were just to drop in
True.
as a viewer.
Yeah,
But-
you if you haven't seen seasons 1 and 2, you miss a lot of the arc of John Henry Irons and Sam Lane. You see how they progress, right? So I mean, yeah, Henry Irons came to Earth as on a mission to destroy Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Superman of his world destroyed his world and killed his wife, Lois Lane.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So it's kind of like at the beginning, it's like John Henry Irons and Sam Lane are kind of like villains of the piece. They're not really villains, but
The
they're
antagonist.
thank you, Adrienne. Civil War antagonists. Thank you. So yes, but you see that arc progress, and
then Kyle is also.
I hated Kyle in the first season. I thought he was
Yeah.
just
Once he finally found out, and he was like friends with Superman. I was like,
well, this is gonna be the best thing. I'm friends with Superman. Yeah, what he did to Lana, of course, I hated it even more at that point. But he redeems himself, and then of course, ultimately, Lana marries John Henry Irons, and that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about I'm sorry, James.
Well, I think to talk about the epilogue, we have to like finish like Superman's heart gets ripped out by Doomsday.
Right.
It gets destroyed by Lex Luthor,
Mm-hmm.
and then, without being too convoluted for the audience, I guess they have he injects himself. Luthor's about to kill Sam Lane.
But right before that, he injects himself with.
What is that he injected? Because that came from season 3, I guess, right?
Was it Kryptonian blood, Adrienne?
Or something like that? He injects himself with...
Yes, it was... Yeah, I am not entirely clear on what happened, but it was something to do... Yeah, it was like Superman's blood, but they had done something with it to create the injection when he was doing all the trials to save... When Mannheim was doing the trials to save his wife.
Thank you. I forgot that, right?
And that's what had created... Doomsday, because Doomsday kept coming back stronger when he got killed. So that's
every
why
time he got killed, he was stronger. Yeah.
Sam had him kill him a few times. So it was something like that. I don't know, because there were a lot of different things into that at once. So it made his heart stronger so that it could go into Superman.
Right.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. That was the plan. I'm assuming that was the whole plan, the whole thing. He injected himself with that formula, gets killed by Doomsday, right?
Yes, he does.
It was one of the times
in front of Lois and Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah, and then his body is taken to the fortress,
and the holographic mother does the off screen. We don't see it happening, but she apparently does the operation.
I was surprised he opened his eyes that fast. Like, I thought that there was going to be another episode of them wondering if it worked, but it was like, oh no, it worked. He showed up.
Well, again, I could see like that whole thing probably would have been a longer season because it was very fast between Clark's death to getting the heart to him being back on the farm after the buried.
Yes.
Like I'm like that happened in like off screen almost. Like he woke up and then he's by Lois at her dad's graveside. That was probably 2 or 3 episodes in another season, but they truncated it. But still good. These are not. I mean, I think they did a magnificent job. Like so many storylines in one season, in 10 episodes. So that because of the modified human heart, it's revealed that Superman over time will lose his powers, but not only that, age like a normal human being.
Right.
And so that takes us to the final episode's epilogue.
Exactly. It's
which is what I want to
30.
get
He's
to. So
sitting
I'll
on the
let
porch. He says 32 years later, something like that, right?
Or he said he lived another 32 years. The heart allowed him to live another 32 years. So I don't know how much longer Lois lived.
He talks about Lois's cancer coming back, and finally she succumbs to it.
Right.
I cried like a baby during that scene. And,
Oh yeah.
that's why,
Actually, Dad and I just I needed to refresh my memory before we did this, so I went back to that epilogue, and Mom and Dad were in here, and all three of us were welling up again. And Mom hadn't even seen. Mom watched the first 2 seasons with Dad, but then I watched season 3 with Dad when he was here, so she didn't see season 3. She didn't see season 4, and even without seeing all that backstory or where things had come from and that sort of thing, she was also welling up with tears. Though when he opens the door and you see Lois in the red dress, Mom laughed. She's like, "Oh, this is how," and we are like, "No, that makes sense if you saw season 3, because there's a whole story behind that dress." So,
yep. Forgot that. You're right. That's right. I forgot.
But yeah, but it is. I could see if you don't know that, it is kind of like, oh yeah, that's everybody's normal, and then there's Lois in this fancy dress, which is so out of Lois's character, which was part of that plot about the dress. So,
is it like during that time he kind of just recaps like what he and Lois did for the world outside of him being Superman? Like
in those last 32 years.
They set up foundations and use their time wisely, and it was very like
we also see him flying with his 2 sons flanking him, and with John Henry Irons and Natasha, also Natalie, not Natasha, Natalie also. So there had to be a period where the Earth had 5 superheroes, and that's the first time and only time we get a comic accurate Steel. He's got the red cape. He's got the S on his chest. Yes. It's so cool. I love Steel. Is a great character. So yeah, I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. So
yeah, and
they had grandkids and crypto.
I counted. They had 9 between the boys. Between them had 9 children. One had 5. One had 4. I counted them all. And
well, there were definitely some twins in there at one point. They were holding 2 babies.
Well, obviously twins run. Twins. Yeah. Always had twins. But I like the scene where the door opens and we see the boys come in as men, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, they come in and then they morph into men.
They morph into men. Thank you. Yeah. And one of those actors is Elizabeth Tulloch's husband. I forget which one. Yeah. So that's kind of, but so can we assume that because we saw that scene of them, all 5 of them flying, we can assume that before Clark's heart started really giving out and his powers were depleting, that there must have been a few years where Superman, aided by others, was still doing Superman type things, still protecting the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they ever want to go back and do a movie, a TV movie I don't think the budget is there on Nexstar now, which is now formerly known as CW. You could give us a movie that takes place before Superman loses all his powers, and and we see the 5 of them maybe taking on Brainiac. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. So, but
they also, I thought they did a decent job with the old age makeup.
Yes, they did. Right? Yeah. Would you say, Adrienne, that was prosthetics and that wasn't AI? That was prosthetics, probably, right? That makeup.
Oh, I have no idea.
I think
whatever. I would think, but I didn't think about CGI, not AI.
Yeah, thank you.
At this point, everyone's saying AI when they mean
CGI. We got AI on the brain right now.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I didn't even think about that. I thought it was makeup, but I suppose it's possible they use CGI. But I don't know. I think for the budget, it would have made more sense to do makeup. I'm not quite sure. But
I think you're right, because the budget was slashed. That's why the recurring characters didn't appear in every episode, because they couldn't afford them all. That's why Michael Cudlett's he was basically the 5th regular, and everybody else was a quote unquote recurring character, and they had to tie up their story arcs, and they did a great job with that.
He directed the episode. I think he directed episode 8.
Michael Cudlett's.
And
wasn't paying attention.
Elizabeth Henstridge directed, I'm assuming, her episode, that she was in, the actress that played his daughter.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Simmons from Agents of Shield.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Well, yeah. See, now you jogged my memory again.
She
Tough getting old,
directed an
trust me.
episode, and one of the producers / recurring directors was he was in an episode. He was in the episode where they do the interview where Clark reveals himself to the world.
Mhm.
Apparently, that whole all the crew members that he walks by, those are all, or not all, but at least several of them are actual crew members from Superman and Lois.
Oh,
So they were on, like they were making their cameos.
Oh, that's
and
kind of cool.
So that was like a
That's
genuine
nice.
thing. But the director of the episode was and he was an actor when he was younger. He was Ephraim in Everwood, which was also a Berlanti show way back when. But he's one of the producers and directors on Superman and Lois. So I'd see his name pop up a bunch, and he was one of the people in that one. So yeah, it was like a lot of the directors were making appearances in the show because in most cases they were actors in it. But so
Very good.
And Joe, like I was telling you off air, I felt like the final episode, especially the epilogue, reminded me of the book "Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow" by Alan Moore. Because Superman decides to become mortal at the end of that, so he can just live his life with Lois, and they give a little bit of he gets a town in the suburb, a house in the suburbs with him and Lois, and they live like a normal
and the little
life.
baby off to the side takes the piece of coal out of the and crushes it, makes it into a diamond. So
that's right. Yeah.
We know there's gonna be another Superman.
Yeah. So
the torch will be passed.
Yeah, but
that would have been a neat little thing in the epilogue if like they had shown some sort of indication that any of the kids might have had a little bit of powers. They didn't need to, but it would have been a fun little Easter egg or something.
Do you think that by the time the boys are men and we've seen them with their wives and their children, and Clark is aging at that point, because it's now it's getting close to that 32 years, do you think the boys were still active as superheroes at that point? I got the feeling they weren't at that point. I don't know. It's hard to. They didn't address that. We saw them as teenagers, don their comic accurate costumes, especially Jonathan. Jonathan wound up with Connell's costume, and they came up with a new one for Jordan, and Natalie and John Henry Irons had their comic accurate costumes also. But I got the feeling as they became men that, maybe I thought, well, because wasn't there a line that John Henry Irons uttered that we're going to take care of things. I have a feeling that maybe the torch was passed to John and Natalie to be protectors of the world of Earth when Superman started slowing down. Because remember, it was John Henry who told Clark, "Yeah, hearing loss is one of the signs of your heart failing. Clark, you're not going to be Superman much longer." So obviously, maybe the boys, but maybe it was John and Natalie that picked up the torch. Which would make for a good sequel, by the way.
Or maybe they all saved the world, just like in Smallville.
Oh, in Smallville, yes. So that's just the prankster and the toy man left, right? And Lois, not Lois, but anybody could take care of it. Jimmy Olsen. We saw Jimmy Olsen. That's right.
We did, and you never know, Joe. In this world, like after Superman lost his powers, maybe that was the rise of the other heroes that we know.
I like that, James.
Maybe Barry's running around and Oliver's running around, and Bruce finishes training later. Then.
And Kara's ship shows up a little bit later, years later, right?
So there could be, so it could just be different. Same heroes arise as different timeline for them.
Yeah, there you go, because it's a different universe.
So the boys can retire and just be family men.
I like that, James. The new heroes arise, and there's a new Justice League, and John Henry Irons is the leader. Him and Natalie bring all these disparate heroes together. Is anybody out there listening in WB? This
Well, we know Diggle is there, and he had been offered the ring in their
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
in
That's
their
right.
universe also.
Diggle was in season 1 as the Diggle from the quote-unquote Arrowverse when that season 1 apparently took place in the Arrowverse. And then
Yeah, because it
there
was
was Diggle.
I think originally they would have,
Yeah,
if it hadn't been for COVID and the other shows winding up getting canceled, I think they would have tied it in.
yeah, because at the end of season 3, when the Square World is about to crash into Earth, and
That's
the boys are thank you, season 2, and the boys are freaking out, and the grandfather says, "Don't worry about it. Your father can handle this. I've been to other worlds where they have leagues of heroes. We
Yes.
only have one hero in this world, but we have Superman, and he'll take care of this." And he does. So,
And
yeah.
that was basically saying, okay, people, we're not
We're not
going to connect this with the Arrowverse.
We're on the Arrowverse proper. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, you got to give them credit. I mean, especially for the season 4, they just say, "Hey guys, you've been canceled. You got to get the whole thing done in 10 episodes." Okay.
At least they were able to get it done. It's horrible when they have when a show sets up a cliffhanger and then they just don't come back. So
Yeah.
Like the aforementioned Lois and Clark, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Or another show that Joe and I were watching and telling everybody to watch when it originally ran, Firefly.
Firefly.
Yeah.
Did that end on the cliffhanger? I don't remember. It's been so long. It's 20 years ago.
But it wasn't like a cliffhanger, but it did leave you wondering, so what's up with the 2x2 hands with blue and all that? You know, you didn't know what exactly was going on with everything and what the story was with.
Is that streaming anywhere? I'd like to watch that again.
It's on DVD. It is streaming. I am blanking
I'll
on
look
which
for
streaming service it's on, but it's definitely on something.
Yeah. Again, I thought the ending of the last episode was great. The fight was great. I mean, there was one thing, I'm going to nitpick one thing in the last episode. Clark is about to toss Doomsday into the sun, right? But Doomsday puts up his hands and like this, and we see him reflecting back to when he was Bizarro Clark, and he's thinking of his Lois Lane, right? And he knows that it's time. I got to go because I've caused a lot of trouble on this other Earth. And at the same time, Clark hears, it might be Jordan or something. Clark hears somebody on Earth that they're in trouble because Luther's now in the suit. There in no universe. Well, that's not true. In the Silver Age, Superman could hear across space, I guess. But since then, no, sound doesn't travel in space. Right. And I don't even think Superman could hear sound from 93 million miles away, especially if his pals were waiting. Yes, he's next to the sun. Something. Yeah, he does hear. He hears a cry for help back on Earth. And we know that it's not stated, but it's understood that Clark being that close to the sun would, even though his heart was failing, would rejuvenate because he was getting a solar battery power burst. But hearing something 93 miles away through the vacuum of space, no.
Actually, the thing that bumped me in that scene was Doomsday was like, "No, wait," and then basically said, "Yes, push me in," and then he pushes him in. So it was like you saying, "No, don't throw me in the sun. Throw me in the sun."
Well, I think Doomsday wanted him. He couldn't speak again.
Right. He wanted to know he was going willingly.
Yeah. Unless this is Star Wars where we hear explosions in space, but or Superman 2 where they're talking on the moon, General Zod and Ursa Anon. But this show avoided most of all those pratfalls. Mm-hmm. The laws of physics cannot be bent to the point of extremes here. We got to have some. I'm going to say it again: verisimilitude. Yes. And they really did it. They really did a good job.
Yeah, I agree. Well, any other final thoughts or highlights before we wrap up this episode?
I could go on talking about this for another 3 hours. You opened up a Pandora's box here, James. All I want to say is I think of the 12 years of the Arrowverse, previously, before Superman and Lois, my favorite show was Arrow. It had the one stinker season 4, the magic season, which, no one should ever watch that. If they're going to watch Arrow, just skip over 4. And that's the Damien Dark season. Ugh.
That one didn't bother me as much as the guy with the tattoos, the
Oh, the tattooed man. Yeah. Oh no,
Diaz?
the tattooed man winds up in Black Lightning under a different name.
Oh,
That's
really? No, I think
yeah. By the
no.
way,
It was Diaz, or was it Diaz, or am I mixing it up with a
Oh yeah,
different show?
Diaz. Yeah,
it
yeah,
might have been
Yeah,
Diaz. Yeah.
I did not
Diaz.
like that when he Oliver gets framed or whatever it was. He winds up in, or was he framed? I don't know, but he wound up in jail. It was just
It
that
was too much.
season.
Yeah.
That season bothered me the most out of
Well,
all.
this was my favorite. Lois was my favorite
Yeah,
Arrowverse show by far.
I think probably mine too.
Yeah, and I think one of the better, iterations of live action Superman ever
Yeah. I would
on
agree with
small
that.
or
Yes.
large screen.
So,
Agreed.
well, listening audience, it's available for streaming on Max. All
Mhm.
4 seasons
seasons,
are there,
that's
so you
correct,
can
that's
go.
correct.
Don't just have to take our word for it. You can go out and just actually stream it and watch it and take advantage of it. But let's bring this in for a landing. So yeah, like I said, streaming. If you've seen this, we would love to hear your thoughts about it. You can put your thoughts on the Facebook page. Where this will be on YouTube in some form, so you can put comments there. Spotify, we have comments. You can go over to Spotify, even if you listen to Apple, and you can leave comments with this episode. But of course, I could not have done this episode without my 2 other hosts. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Adrienne, for being here and letting us see the baby. It was so good.
Yes, and Adrienne,
Highlight of
thank
my
you
day.
for joining us and chiming in because I know what a big fan you were of the whole Arrowverse and of the show particularly. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to.
Yeah, and listening audience, like I said, please, we'd love to hear from you, and we thank you for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode.